right, Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, we have the return of Ellia and Jeff from Charming Disaster. Charming Disaster is a folk duo with a gothic twist to it. If you enjoy folklore, crime, myth, magic, science, and the occult, then the topics of Jeff and Ellia's songs are for you. Their last record, Our Lady Radium, honed in on Marie Curie and the story of the Radium Girls. Their new record that's coming out, Supernatural History, applies that approach to songwriting in a bunch of different topics, such as monsters and bats and disembodied heads. And it's it's fun. It's fun. It's like if you dig B horror movies, you're gonna dig Charming Disaster. Now, in my last talk with them, we dive deeper into their history and the forming of the band and their songwriting approach. This conversation, we mostly focus on the new record. And before we even plug a new tune from it, if you're in Cleveland, April 29th at the Whiz Bang Theater, Charming Disaster is going to be there performing. I'm going to be there. Zig is going to the gig. The title! Also accompanying this new release of Supernatural History, Charming Disaster is putting out their own deck of Oracle cards. Each card features a song they've put out, and you guys might know the bit from the shows when they use tarot cards to pick the set. So now now you can get custom cards with Charming Disaster tunes on it. It's really cool. Not too many bands do cool things like that. So that's available as well. We're going to listen to a tune. We kind of get into the tune Disembodied Head in our conversation. So we're going to listen to Disembodied Head off Supernatural History by Charming Disaster. Disembodied Head by Charming Disaster, Supernatural Histories, the album, available now on all streaming platforms. So, Clevelanders, if you're hanging out by the Whiz Bang Theater in Cleveland Heights, April 29th, you can catch Charming Disaster live. It's going to be a good show. I highly recommend it. And if you dig what you just heard, and you have a more historical questioning or more musical theory, like songwriting inquiry, check out our first conversation, because we dive way more into it in that episode. Anywho, if you can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests and sharing their insight with you. And without further ado, here we go. Here's my conversation with Charming Disaster. I'm bummed. I was hoping when you guys were in Cleveland. Well, actually, I had no clue that when you guys were in Cleveland, there was that whole performance thing in front of Tower City. And
Yeah.
I sent you guys a message on Facebook, because I realized walking past this cool circus tent that they're like, oh, we have some musical acts. And I'm like, I know these guys.
Yeah, we had forgotten that you were in Cleveland, and we would have given you a shout if we had remembered. And we did get that message, and then I guess you couldn't make it in the end.
Yeah, because I had a gig that day, and I'm like, damn, if I could just be here for another hour or two or whatever it was. But it was such a crazy small world, and it's kind of like when you reach out and do all these things just like you guys are doing, and like I'm sure you see it more as you're hitting the road more, but just kind of meeting the faces and the voices you talk to it's awesome. Like it puts it makes it real.
It is really awesome. Good news, we're coming back to Cleveland at the end of April.
Nice.
So,
Where at?
yeah. The Whiz Bang Circus Theater. So the tent you saw is the Whiz Bang tent, which is a project of Pinch and Squeal, who are a Cleveland-based vaudeville duo. But they also have a theater in Cleveland Heights, which is this like adorable black box kind of theater. And it's great, and it's sort of become our place where we play in Cleveland when we come through. So yeah, it's like a 50-seat theater, and it's really cute, and they're going to open for us. So it'll be like little vaudeville act, and then we'll do our show.
Oh, that's so cool. It was April what? Let's make sure to say it again.
It's April 29th,
April
Saturday.
29th, Saturday.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to try to be there at that one.
Yeah, let's put you on the list.
Yeah, no, okay, then I'm definitely there. Was it, and another, kind of jumping, let's jump in with that. Let's keep that in the beginning. We're in it now.
Right.
But another wild, like small world happening with that Whiz Bang event. So like I've told you guys, I'm a music teacher, and the science teacher at my work was like, yeah, we went to this thing downtown and we saw this really cool band called Charming Disaster. I'm like, no way.
Oh, that's awesome. I feel like we're achieving some kind of like critical mass
Tipping
in,
point
yeah, in
kind of thing.
Cleveland.
Yeah.
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 Saturation. We're
That's right.
achieving
We're
market
everywhere now.
saturation among the circus and science community of,
Yeah.
of Cleveland.
Well, it was so cool because he was telling me about your last record. I'm like, I know, it's really good, right?
Oh, that's so cool.
Oh, neat.
Who is the science teacher at your?
His name was Alex. I'll
Oh,
give you a last name and everything after the podcast, but like his name's Alex, and he was like he was so into like it's like yeah, it's all about Marie Curie and the Radium Girls, and I'm like yeah, I know, it's so good.
Yes, it's working.
That's right.
Our world domination plan is working. That's really fun.
But so the kind of tie that all that crazy happening into the new record, coming from like a very kind of focused record on radium and the people around it, Marie Curie and the Radium Girls, with this next record, Supernatural History. It's kind of going through it, like, because I like to listen to everything and then read about it. It's like it hits all these different genres in a way that are like it's similar to your type from listening to the past discography, but also fresh and like it's like hitting some of that science and like historical context, but also not as like a clear focused as like the last record. Was that kind of an intentional choice, or were these songs kind of just popped up as you were writing them in related contexts?
Well, I think the last record, Our Lady of Radium, was more of a departure in the fact that it was, a focused subject. This whole album is about that whole album was about one thing. But this, Supernatural History is just like a continuation of all of our interests, be it natural history, be it occult stuff, be it, folklore and that kind of thing. So this is more of kind of how we've been doing things in the past.
Yeah, like although I feel like we sort of like gathered in some of the scientific focus of Our Lady of Radium to kind of go along with our occult interests. But yeah, we typically we kind of collect songs. Like we're always working on something. Like we always have some song at some stage of the pipeline.
Yeah.
So like right now, for instance, we have this new album coming out. We are starting to do pre-production work on some new songs for what will probably be the next album. And we're working on a brand new song that's not even totally written yet. So like we always have something at some stage. Like we're not the kind of band that like goes in, we're like, okay, we're going to write an album and then we're going to record that album and like that'll be the album. We've kind of always got things at different stages. So when we sort of reach enough songs to have an album, we sort of look at it and we're like, what did we do? Like, what do we have here?
How does this, and with this, with Supernatural History, it all kind of hangs together in the sense that it's like, the theme of it is that it is a cabinet of curiosities. There are all these separate things that are connected in this way, in our interest of, wondrous things.
Yeah,
basically.
like the connecting thread is like our sense of curiosity and wonder and oh my gosh, isn't this neat?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's science or some occult thing. It's just like, oh, this is cool. So that's kind of that is the focus, in retrospect of this album.
Yeah, and
like as it collects, we're like, oh, this all makes sense. This hangs together in this way.
Yeah, and it's an approach to the world that is really rewarding. Like to like be open to learning new things and being surprised by things and kind of delighted by like the weirdness of the world around you.
That's beautiful. And like kind of bouncing from our last conversation when like because I was asking a little bit about the research for the last record. It almost seems like this is kind of like because the other one's having more of the occult and like diving into that curiosity and celebrating it in a way like which is your guys' expression, which is music. It seems like so, and with what you guys just said, the science is kind of creeping in maybe a little more in this aspect of you guys. So like it's a really cool like. I guess just writing process because when it comes to like being a creative and being like a musician and always like or a songwriter. Being a songwriter, it's like a numbers game. You're always just kind of writing. So like kind of celebrate the research and stuff you guys enjoy in that way is really cool. And is that kind of why this process keeps turning? Is it like oh, manta rays are cool, check this out?
Yeah, totally. And there's lots of things that are sort of like in that backlog where it's like, oh, like we ought to have a song about poisonous plants, which becomes hellbore. But like, we've been saying that for like a long time before it actually came to pass. And like there are things now that are like that where it's like, oh, like vampire squids are really cool.
Yeah.
Like maybe we ought to have a vampire squid song at some
point. Or a
point.
song about our double, some like doppelganger that's out to kill you.
Yeah. I feel like that's all of our songs.
Well, that's true.
So yeah, I mean, we get, I mean, even when we're on tour driving, like that's one of the ways that we like amuse ourselves on the road. Like we'll be like, oh, like what's saltpeter anyway?
Yeah.
Like that comes up in like, Revolutionary War stuff. Like what was saltpeter? Like why was it important for the Revolutionary War? And then like you find out it's made from like, and it's like
animal urine.
Yeah, we don't. But it's like you like start by like looking stuff up, and then like you go down all these weird pathways, and sometimes it's hard to predict what will kind of spark enough of an obsession to become a song.
Yeah.
But yeah, bats and manta rays, poisonous plants were definitely subjects that hit those marks for us.
And some just kind of come out of our subconscious, and we're like sitting down and something will come up and we're like, oh, this is about a disembodied head. Like, and then, once there's a spark and then we infuse it with the, where we're at and what we're thinking of at the time about different things, that relate to that.
It is hard. It is hard for us because we've been so busy. It is sometimes hard to like carve out the kind of time and space where you can go like chasing those images and sort of see where they lead you in an open-ended way. And we've been talking a lot, just lately about needing to kind of feed the source, replenish the wellspring, and just like take in interesting stuff and see where it goes. So I think there's some of that in our near future, hopefully, too.
That's awesome. I mean, it's great to be busy, and it's great to have all the things, and it's great to have the next thing lined up, so you're never like, there's never the panic of like, what do we do now? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there is always the like deeper panic, but I remember like before Charming Disaster, when my band played more sporadically, my previous band, Sweet Soubrette, like I always had the feeling like as long as I knew when the next gig was, like I was okay. Like, like we know what's happening at least for the next 6 weeks. Cause like there's a gig and like, hopefully, it's like a breadcrumb. And this band, we have so much coming up that it's like, well, we know what we're doing through like July.
Right.
So that's something. And like, and maybe next year a little bit.
That's fantastic to have that booked up. That's amazing. And I totally agree with that. It's like, with anything in music, there's no guarantee that you'll get asked to play back. It's like you work so hard to get in the door and try to make the show all right. And then doing what you guys are doing when you're traveling through different towns, it's always trying to find some type of audience, like no matter how well the internet works, reality works differently. And so the fact that you guys that it's panning out in these, that's like the biggest breadcrumb. This is working. We can go back to Cleveland.
Right. People care. People have been responding to what we've been doing, and that's been really exciting and humbling at the same time.
I mean, a lot of what we do in terms of booking out is like I send out like I probably send out a dozen emails at least for every like show that actually happens. And a lot of that is like, kind of trying to create the world we want to live in. So for instance, we are going to play our second show at the Science History Institute in Philadelphia this summer. And that came about because we were like, oh, we've got these Curie songs. Like, we should try to play some science museums. And we reached out to a bunch of them, and this place responded, and we did a show there that was really cool. And so but they didn't like invite us back. We were like, hey, like, you want to have us back? Remember us?
And they're like, oh yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, like
sure.
Let's make that happen. So there's a lot of like active like making things happen.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. And like what's so cool and like endearing and inviting about you guys is just the vibe in the culture you create around you. Like as a band, like, or as a musical act, sometimes that is the hardest part, to have like an identity. And you guys have this like just addicting and like fun and like inviting like identity that I don't see with a lot of bands. And the fact that you can find an outlet like a science, like hearing that you guys are like, I think I remember seeing that post. I'm like, that makes sense. That's so sick. It's, you know what I mean? Like, that's so cool. And it's so cool that like you can make like I 100% agree with what you're saying. I didn't mean to like imply the other way. We we do create our own where we are and where we fit, but it's just like you're saying, it's endless work and endless emails into the void. But I think with you guys, you have this special thing that's already like encompassing about you, that makes it like, oh yeah, I can see them playing in an aquarium with the manta rays for a music video for this. Like.
Yeah, if there are any aquarium owners listening to this, please book us for your aquarium show.
Or if you have a personal aquarium that's really large and you want to...
Or in the aquarium. We would play in the aquarium.
Yeah, we'll take scuba lessons.
Some kind of like bubble, like one of those like diving bells.
Sure.
No,
we're open to everything. And in Cleveland, as you were saying, like, you have a friend who's a science teacher who's heard of us. You saw us playing at the Whiz Bang Circus, and then we're also at the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic there. I mean, we're not in it, but we're our stickers. They know us there, and we
try to visit when we come through. And
I'd say those are our three main, a large
science, witchcraft, and circus. Yeah.
But those are three markets no bands hit ever, which is what's so cool. And the music is like so good itself. It doesn't need those markets, but it has those markets, which is like, or not markets, or like whatever you call like interest. Like, it's so cool. And like
it's really fun for us to play a tour where we get to hit all three of those kinds of places in the same route. We're like, okay, well, we're going to play the Witchcraft Museum, and then we're going to play like the Circus Tent, and then we're going to play the Science
Institute. Yeah.
Which makes it like makes you guys one of the most fun bands to follow because of that. And like, but like, and the kind of maybe the through line, I can talk this morning, the through line with everything, like the kind of go back to the content is like this curiosity of each one of those things. And going through this new record, I can't remember the tune. I remember it was on the later half of the record. I want to say it was the seventh song, Six Seeds maybe, or Paris Green. There's a line in there that goes, "The magic in the margins."
That's
Grimoire.
That's from Grimoire.
Grimoire. Yeah. Okay, I was on the wrong half the album. But I think each one of these topics that you guys intrinsically like and are drawn to have that magic in the margins. Like even something that's so like studied and planned out, there's a magic that kind of works. And like, I don't know if that was the intent within the tune, but that line stuck out to me. What is the magic in the margins for you guys with some of these topics that you're covering in some of these like areas and not taglines, I don't want to say markets, interest
fears
you're drawn to?
Spheres.
Yeah.
Making magic in the margins. I think part of it has to do with not necessarily differentiating and separating the different kinds of things. Like that there are like mythological and poetic symmetries when you're talking about something from the natural world. So like Bat Song, like much of the imagery in Bat Song is kind of literal imagery about like what a bat looks like, what its experience looks like,
Yeah.
But like there's a resonance there with the sort of Aesop's fable of a bat being neither a bird nor a beast and being the sort of like lone figure among the animals, to the kind of vampire Dracula associations. Like you can take something that is just like a fact in the world, and then you can kind of make it like resonate with all these other kinds of evocative and metaphorical illusions, which is where you get like the magic, I think.
Yeah, and the wonder, I think people who study, bats, for example, they're drawn to that study because it is so exciting and interesting and mysterious, and it might hit on certain personal resonances for them, but I believe it's rarely just like a technical interest of a thing. It's like people are to cephalopods, and octopuses, because they're so exciting and they're so smart, and whatever it is that people get drawn to. I think there's so much that is like the magic and the wonder, and like the origins of a lot of these amateur naturalists from the 1800s and 1700s, where those were the people that were studying things because there wasn't that field of study yet. They were just interested in this thing or this rock or this, and they would just take it upon themselves to be like, oh yes, let's explore this thing. Or like, I've gotten these beautiful gems, and I'll just display it in my cabinet and invite my friends over. We'll drink absinthe or whatever it is and talk about it. I think that there's so much magic in the natural world. And I think also the magic in the margin, I think of us just like doing our thing kind of like on our own, regardless of, what the mainstream, impulses are to do. Like we're creating the world that we want, I think. And it's, I think our interests or our priorities are like, oh, what's the cool thing that we want to do?
Yeah.
And so we're over here in our corner, like working on things that, may or may not be, mainstream in a way,
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, like, it's been like a wonderful surprise to us that as many people are interested in what we're doing as they are. Like, like we kind of are, if we had planned to be, to have like the level of success that we've had, like this is not what we would have planned to do.
But that's what I think. That's well said, and I definitely think there is definitely like there is probably a handful of people who are like, I really like the technical aspects of the aerodynamics of bats, so I'm gonna. But I would like to imagine, and I feel like it's probably more relatable personally to be in the wonder of what a bat is, how it works. Like as a kid, you're like, what did they see at night? How did you know what I mean? Like there's this intrinsic like what if, and maybe that's the magic in the margins, is that little excitement from trying to figure out how a thing works. And like because you definitely see that with the cult, and like there's something that's so drawing with that, and like it's not the answer. It's not the answer that you take off the ghost mask and it's Old Man Jenkins and they solve the mystery, but it's the leading up to that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. There's the idea of mystery in the sort of spiritual sense, like not in like the Agatha Christie sense where like it's something solvable, but like this idea that there is something unknowable out there, and like just sort of grappling with the unknowable is like, that is the thing.
That is exciting.
That's what and as an artist, I think as like a scientist, as any sort of discoverer, but as an artist speaking to our own experiences, like you have to get comfortable with not knowing. And because like, I don't know how a song happens. Like we have written a lot of them, but like, how do you go from like, this is not a song to this is a song? Like there's something that happens, and like, and I could not tell you what it is or when exactly the moment is when it happens.
It's funny. I had a friend who's an artist when he was really just discovering that they were an artist and and committing to it. He's like, we're just like scientists without the education. It's like without the focus. It's like it's the same thing. It's like being a scientist without the focus of higher education.
It's like being the scientist without the excruciating number crunching. Like,
Yeah,
right.
The
Without,
trial.
right, without having to take statistics.
Yeah, the fun part.
The writer Grace Paley, who is one of the artists who I admire the most, she was a writing teacher, and some of her writing teacher prompts are published in one of her books. And she talks about needing to not know everything about the character that you're writing about, that you need to have to be sort of discovering things as you go also. Otherwise, there's sort of no point to making your story. And
it's like, in the recording process, we have things that we know we want to do when we're recording, but ideally we leave room open to kind of let those magical things happen and be open and accepting to that.
Yeah. So for instance, when this album, we started recording some of the tracks ourselves at home to finish in the studio. And we were on such a roll creatively because we were kind of in that mode that we took a little break to do some songwriting, and we each started working on something separately, and we said we'd bring it together and see what we had each made.
Yeah, do a show and tell.
And so we came back together.
Yeah, and I was like, "What's your song about?"
Monsters.
And
what's your song about?
I'm like, monsters.
but really different.
Yeah, the song is different, but we kind of Frankenstein them together, and that's what made it.
That's the first track on the album.
I was gonna say, is that Monsters?
Yeah.
And that's Monsters. Yeah. Like Jeff started with we live in the black. We eat when we can. That was Jeff's bit, and my bit was can't help what we hunger for with appetites of carnivores, and we, when in doubt, just do both things.
Yeah, do both things.
Those are both great lines. Those are both great song seeds. Was this recorded in that house where you guys recorded Our Lady Radio?
Yeah. So
or this rehearsal songwriting experience.
Yeah, so this album, there's kind of two groups of songs.
This album is a Frankenstein
monster. It's true.
Recording process.
Yeah, so for about half of the songs, we went back to my parents' house where we had recorded Our Lady of Radium, and we recorded ourselves the guitar and ukulele and the vocals, and also including Monsters. And these tracks we took with us to Tonal Park in Takoma Park, Maryland, where we've worked for many years with Don Godwin, who's our recording engineer, collaborator, co-producer, multi-instrumentalist pal, who we make do things on our records.
He does.
Oh my gosh, he does a lot of things. We're like, hey Don, how about which horns are you playing these days? He's like, well, I've got a baritone horn and I've got a trombone. Let's do the trombone.
Yeah.
Oh, and the trumpet.
Yeah.
Here, we wrote you a part. It kind of goes like this.
Yeah.
So that was half of the songs, including Monsters. And the other half of the songs,
we were in a recording studio in Brooklyn called Figure 8 Studios with our engineer Hillary. I'm blank spacing.
Oh my gosh. Hillary Johnson.
Hillary Johnson. Sorry. Thank you. And we recorded them with drummer and bass player. The drummer, my friend Rob Garcia, that I've known since first grade and played music with him for many years. And
Bob Smith, who was my bass player in Sweet Sue Brett, who I've known for a long time.
Yeah.
So we had the Roberts as our...
With the Roberts as a rhythm section. And we got to play with them in the studio live, the basic tracks. And that was really fun.
Yeah, so that was Disembodied Head and
Succeeds
and Hellbore and Mold in the Metals.
And Mold in the Metals, yeah. And so that was a very different process. Also, to have someone kind of like, co-producing us and like giving us not pointers, but like suggestions, making suggestions as we were recording. That was also cool.
Just listening. Listening. Like, she's got really amazing ears. Yeah, and so we'd be focused on just like not getting it wrong, and she'd be like that. Like you could do that better.
Yeah,
or
try that again.
or try doing it slightly differently.
Yeah.
So it was very cool getting to have that experience as well. An experience that we had originally scheduled for 2020 and then had gotten pushed back because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Got it. It's sorry.
Yeah. I was just going to say, then we took both of those recordings, and kind of Don did the final kind of like mixing on everything to give it the kind of cohesiveness that we could. So I think it came up.
Yeah, no, definitely. It doesn't sound like the mastering, the levels all sound through line. It doesn't hit me as I'm listening, like, oh, these are two separate sessions, or more. Like, so that Frankensteining bit of the record was attached. Like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes that you could tell that, and like it's annoying because that you think that part should be kind of easier to mitigate, like at the very end process, whatever. But like it's interesting that like that batch of tunes was with a live band, and like the kind of touch, like having someone there to like just be like, yo, do this different. What I mean? It's so critically important because just like you said, you're in your heads about getting the thing right, and like maybe you're not even thinking about what the bass player did because you know what I mean, like
it's really hard to do everything and listen to everything.
It's a different part of the brain. There's the like performing these thing, playing the music correctly in time and pitch, and like focus on that, and then there's the more kind of aesthetic overall, larger picture view, which some like a producer, co-producer can have.
Yeah, well, and granular too, where you're like, oh, like the bass part like didn't do the like ascending thing, right, which we like in this part, and so we want to go back and do that again.
Right.
In the studio with Don, so we had our like it's a kind of a weird way to record. Like typically we start with the rhythm tracks and like layer stuff over that. And this was like the other way around.
Yeah, top down.
Yeah, top down. So we'd recorded to click, so like it, wasn't all over the map. But we got Don to play drums on top of what we had recorded, and then also bass, but like separate. So he's the rhythm section doing it in layers. But the thing that was really fun about that was that we got to play producer in that role, and we could just listen to what was happening.
Yeah.
And, and offer him feedback in the same way, like, oh, like, that part where you were just like doing cross sticks, like that, that's really effective. Can like you do that all the time?
Like do this, don't do that.
That okay. When you're in that chair, that's a really fun chair to be in. I mean, that's a really fun seat to be in because you got your part done. We recorded it to the click. We spent hours grinding our skulls on this.
Yeah, it's just like playtime. So that was fun getting to kind of take turns being in that seat, and we were also doing like backing vocals and some Hammond organ parts. So we were all kind of taking turns in the hot seat, and that was really fun.
Yeah.
It's those little details when you get to put them there and hear them, when you can see that big picture, that's so rewarding. And like, I guess like it's the cowbell is the magic of the margin, within recording, like those little things, what I mean? Those are so fun and so rewarding, and they build this whole picture.
Some of the speaking of cowbell, some of the hand percussion that we tracked on that was like, if you hear like shaker or clave or tambourine or anything like that, it could be any one of us, and we don't know who did what.
We all took turns to like going in there.
Like I've got like some like phone videos of like, Jeff doing a shaker or like me doing a clave or But like that's the only way we have to know who did what, because we were just layering it, and it was a combination of like, oh, I hear something that would be good, and I think you would play this better because your tambourine playing is more precise, you know.
I'm trying to think. Was it a Paris Green that with like that Cuban groove like at the that was so cool, and like that's something that like musically like fits you guys so like when you went into that I'm like, oh, this is so awesome, because there's something kind of like with that type of groove with that chord progression that's kind of eerie but inviting, you know, and I'm like, oh, this is a Charming Disaster like pin perfect example musically right here.
Cool.
Thanks.
One track I wanted to kind of ask about was a Disembodied Head, because that tune like stuck out, you know, and like all of them stuck out in good ways, and like but that had like a almost like a Velvet Underground like vibe to it. Was that kind of the approach, or was that kind of what was that the magic in the margin that happened there when you heard it? I'm gonna keep going to that because like.
Yeah.
I think that's the bit. Like, that's such a cool line. And it's like, you know what I mean? That's such a little nugget of insight for so many things. But, like, as far as, like, was that planned to have that type of vibe? Or is that what came out when you guys were directing and trying different things?
I think it came out of, like, the sound of the song kind of requested that vibe, I think. Okay. You know, the way it was... You know, the way it sounded to us when we were coming up with it was like, oh yeah, this is kind of like a, you know, you were saying Devo, like,
yeah, like I was
like
really
a Devo thing.
I was really thinking of Uncontrollable Urge when we were recording it,
and the Ian Svenonius kind of music. We've been listening to a lot of like the Makeup and Shane and the Gang, and the kind of like really like
over the top, but like
garage,
minimalist, like
crazy lyrics and stuff. So I think, and like the Cramps and that, like a little bit of that feeling to it, you know, that all informed in the mixing sessions and stuff.
Yeah, and like the syncopation of the lyrics, which you know, like that was like from the get go when we wrote it, but we wanted to really highlight that.
Totally. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that okay, that's cool. It's interesting, Devo. I could definitely hear you guys definitely having Cramps influence, like with a lot of your other work as well. But like, that's awesome. So I guess like, so kind of like another thing I wanted to ask, completely kind of off topic, and maybe one, I don't really know what's a grimoire.
Oh, a grimoire is a magical. It's a book of magic spells.
Okay.
It's like the text, the scripture of / cookbook of witchcraft.
So like it in a real like out of like song context like experience, you are writing your own grimoire with like you know what I mean, like with developing these places and finding this niche that is uniquely you guys.
Definitely. And it's kind of speaking to that, like our grimoire, we, you know, with this album, we're releasing our Oracle deck.
That's what I was gonna.
You know, which is basically a 60 card Oracle deck of each card being one of our songs that we've released over the past 10 years. And I look at that and it's just like, it is a book of magic spells, you know, without a fine. So, you know, we could talk more about the Oracle deck, but we just got them in the mail and I'm looking at them right now, and it's like this, it's a culmination of all this work that we've done over the years, and actually to get the deck created and printed, we collaborated with 24 artists to
commission artwork from 24 people for the 60 cards. And it's funny. I was thinking about this yesterday. It's a small object. It's like, 4 inches by 3 inches and about an inch thick. And it's a small object, but it really feels like a magical object. Like you open it up and
Yeah.
there are all these cards inside, and each like all the things that have gone into this, it's like 10 years of songwriting, and like all these artists, like just the object itself feels like a big project, but the fact that like it also represents like our
So
whole
much
body
work.
of work,
Mhm.
like, and it's so compact, so it's like
Yeah.
very dense with like, you know, significance.
Yeah, it is like a fudge. It's like dense and powerful.
That's so cool. Like, well, any like even like a book or whatever. It's so, you know, I mean, there's so much within it, and like that's to like reach out to have like 60 different to organize that. Oh man, but like just to have that much work, to have 60 songs to pull from, and like that you guys play regularly and be able, because you do the tarot cards to determine the sets, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you know, typically we're not drawing from our whole catalog when we're touring. Usually we have like, you know, 20 or 30 songs in the
Right.
mix.
But now
Play,
you got
like-
this deck where you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I
Who
know, we
knows?
don't know
We
what
haven't
to
used it yet in a live show. We just got them.
Yeah.
So.
FedEx delivered like 17 boxes yesterday.
But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. So typically you go with 20 to 30 songs when you tour.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like there's sort of a sweet spot where like you don't want to have too few songs or you're playing the same set every night, and that's less interesting for us. And you don't want to have too many songs where you never get really tight on any of them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, you know, something like a couple dozen songs, maybe 30 songs,
Mhm.
is like it's like a small enough number for us to have like everything really tight, but a large enough number that like we don't quite know what's going to
Yeah.
happen on any given
Yeah.
card draw.
And with up to 30 songs, like each set can feel so different. I think I was just thinking about like, you know, the cards that are pulled will have a different feel from one day to the next, and you'll be like, oh, that was an intense
Yeah.
set.
Oh, that was dark.
That was dark. There are a lot of dark songs,
Yeah.
so it's pretty easy for it to get dark.
True.
It's not like a lot of uplifting. I mean, they're fun songs. It's tongue-in-cheeky, but
Yeah, I mean
darkness,
the uplift is like in the music and in the like the
presentation.
communion of like
Mhm.
performance and audience.
Yeah.
Not in the content necessarily.
That's so cool. And like it has to be rewarding just to know I'm trying to find like an equivalent that's not like it's like looking at the tour poster at the end of the tour, and just, you know, it's like a minor thing. It's a small sheet of paper, but the amount of work that went into completing all of it, to making the context within it valid, real, and honest is such a heavy thing. And I'm so stoked to hear that for you guys. Like when I was reading that, I was like, "Oh, that's cool." Like just to make that one that's like completely you guys that offer that type of thing. Like but to have it relate so much to your history, because like even when me and my bass player go back and forth on some silly like, "Oh no, the pin should have this. Oh, maybe we put that, you know, in the lower corner." And
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1,000%. I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but like, don't you think it should be like a little bit bigger, or like, what if it's red?
But that's so awesome. So like so with the tarot cards, when you're drawing the set, like how like before the oracle deck, or was it other oracle? Like I'm a little unfamiliar with
Oh, sure. So typically we like up until now we've used a traditional tarot deck, the kind of classic it's known as the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, the
Right.
artist Coleman Smith. And so we had associated ourselves each of those cards with one of our songs. And sometimes associations are really obvious, like the devil card triggers our song Devil May Care, and some of them are a little more oblique, like the Two of Swords is Bad Song because she's blindfolded.
Right.
Okay. That's where I was gonna like, how's that work?
Yeah. It's cool that when people pick, they get very excited or interested in
that song
in that
particular.
song. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, what was that song? I think it was the Two of Cups. You know, what's the name?
Right.
of
More like, oh, that's Blue Bottle Blues.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah.
That's so awesome. So like with it's one other like it's such a cool concept. I've never like thought of this with like any other group I've gotten to talk with, but just like it's so because like with songwriting and art itself, it's like such a like appreciation for the spur of the moment, right? To be
Mhm.
able to capture this photo of a duck flying or something, or just like to
Mhm.
see hear a passing conversation and someone says one line that becomes a poem or a song, and like
Mhm.
now to kind of think of it too is like this curiosity and wonder of like why does this thing fall down gravity, like whatever, like what I mean, like I've never thought of that in that same context until our kind of conversation now, so I really appreciate that insight. And I
Yeah,
guess my sorry.
the research-based song I think is undervalued in
Yeah,
pop songwriting.
Yeah. I guess my question is, you guys at the beginning, or kind of at the top, you talked about taking time to do that inspiration, and what does that look like for you guys?
Hmm.
what does that look like? Well, ideally, we get to go someplace for at least a few days to kind of sit and work on something, whether it's like a project like the Curie, like when we worked on the Curie songs, we were in an artist residency for 2 weeks in northern Michigan in the winter. And so it was like pretty forced, kind of,
Reading and writing time.
yeah, and enforced kind of like isolation, which was really helpful. But we've tried to like recreate that at least on a smaller scale, at least once a year, say, where we go away for 3 or 4 days and sit and like either work on something, some outstanding like assignment that we might have, or some songs that we want to finish up or we want to work on, or even to generate some new things and just leave room for any new songs or possibilities that could come up, whether we're recording them there or not. That's kind of what it looks like, where we just get up in the morning. We usually draw a tarot card.
To kind of set the tone of the day, and then we make a little schedule for the day, and then we do the schedule, and it's there's some like going off to our separate corners to kind of do stuff separately, and then come back together to do the show and tell moment, and then if we have something that's on its feet from the separate corners part, then we kind of work on those together, like to carry them forward. Yeah, that's oh, and there's a lot of like meal cooking.
I was just gonna say snacks.
Yeah, there's a lot of snacks.
Meal
Like,
cooking.
and we cook dinner. Like usually we'll make dinner and then we'll like have it leftovers for lunch the next day. And like eating is like a big part of our.
Yeah, and just like working on the meals together. Sort of kind of there's something.
Yeah, that kind of puts you back in your body in the moment, in the present.
And we're still like collaborating on a thing.
Yeah.
Like whether it's
no longer a disembodied head.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing, so there's the sort of like retreat model, which we've done a lot of and are kind of overdue for one. We were gonna do one in January, but Jeff got put on grand jury duty, and
no.
And the other thing is more of like an ongoing thing, which is like going to museums and like looking at art and like having cultural experiences, like consuming and experiencing like the things that other people have made.
Seeing a performance.
Yeah. And we haven't been doing enough of that lately, and so hopefully we're going to do a little. And we built that into our touring actually. Like if we have a day off, we'll try to do something cool. And if we're in a city where we know there's like an interesting roadside attraction or a neat museum or
the world's largest shoe or something.
Yeah, we do like make a point of seeing those things when we're out in the world. Yeah.
That's awesome. In Cleveland, if you're looking for something to do, there's a really cool art gallery called Negative Space. I think you guys would dig.
Oh, cool.
But I'll put it out. I'll send info on that.
Please.
But I think that's so important. Like Joe Strummer has this input-output theory.
Oh yeah.
If you, I don't know if you guys are hip to Joe Strummer, but he's the singer of the Clash. Okay. He's got the that one record's orange and there's like this funnily line thing on it, and it's basically an illustration of that. To put out, you need to take in, and you guys do this really cool job of illustrating. It can be something that's just curiosity and excitement and like educational and really, and that's super inspiring. So with this next batch of tunes that's following this next batch of tunes, I'm very excited to hear and see what that's going to be. And I really appreciate you guys' time.
Oh, it was so fun talking to you.
Yeah, great
I'm glad we got
talking
to chat again.
Likewise.
And I hope we get to meet you in person in Cleveland on April 29th at the Whiz Bang Theater.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig of the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.